The stars above the ruined colony world were cold and distant, shining like tiny fires in a dark ocean. Marin sat on the edge of the outpost wall, his rifle resting across his knees. The night was quiet, almost too quiet, and that made him uneasy. For months there had been talk of peace, whispers of a truce between humans and the alien race known as the Dran. But Marin had been a soldier too long to believe in whispers. He had seen truces break before, sometimes in the middle of the night, when fire rained from the sky without warning. The outpost itself was nothing more than a cluster of bunkers built into the remains of the old colony city. Once families had lived here. Streets had been full of shops and lights. Now the buildings were nothing but hollow shells, walls blackened by fire, windows shattered, doors hanging loose on broken hinges. The outpost was a place of waiting. Soldiers came and went. Patrols circled the ruins, and every night they listened for the sound of engines in the sky. Marin pulled his jacket tighter around him and rubbed his hands together. The air was sharp with cold, carrying the smell of metal and ash. He looked out over the ruins, his eyes tracing the broken outlines of towers and fallen beams. Somewhere out there, he thought, the Dran were watching too. Maybe they were as tired as he was. Maybe not. When the order came, Marin climbed down from the wall and took his turn on patrol. He moved through the ruins with steady steps, his boots crunching over gravel and glass. The moonlight slid over his armor, casting pale silver across the black plates. He kept his weapon ready but low, eyes scanning shadows, ears listening for anything beyond the wind. The ruins stretched far, and most of the patrols were quiet. But tonight, after a long stretch of silence, Marin heard something strange. It was faint at first, a thin sound carried by the wind. He paused, tilting his head. It was not the sound of metal scraping or machines moving. It was softer, higher, almost like a voice. He moved toward the sound, careful with each step. The ruined buildings seemed to lean closer around him, their walls groaning in the cold. The sound came again, clearer this time. It was a cry, weak and broken, like that of a small creature. Marin's breath caught in his chest. It did not sound human. He slipped into the shell of a building, his light scanning across rubble. The cry came once more, and he followed it to a collapsed corner where beams of steel and stone lay tangled together. Something shifted beneath the rubble. Marin dropped to one knee and shone his light closer. There, trapped beneath a heavy slab, was a child, but not a human child. Its skin shimmered faintly like metal reflecting moonlight. Its eyes were large and glassy, filled with fear. Its small hands clawed weakly at the rubble, but it could not move. The moment Marin saw the child, his heart began to pound. A Dran. An enemy. He froze, torn between instinct and training. The war had taken everything from him. Friends, comrades, even his sister, who had once lived on this very colony. Every order, every lesson told him that the Dran were the enemy, that mercy had no place here. And yet, as the child's cries filled the broken room, Marin felt something rise inside him. He could not walk away. Marin slung his rifle across his back and set his hands on the slab. It was heavy, too heavy to move at once, but he braced his legs and heaved with all his strength. Muscles burned, veins pressed against his skin, and sweat slid down his neck despite the cold. Slowly, the slab shifted, scraping across the ground. The child let out a small gasp. With one final push, Marin shoved the slab aside and the rubble rolled free. The child curled into itself, shivering. Marin knelt down, keeping his hands open to show no harm. "Easy," he whispered, though he knew the Dran language was not his own. Still, his voice was calm, steady, the way he once spoke to his little sister when she woke from nightmares. The child looked at him with wide eyes, then reached out a trembling hand. Marin's chest tightened. Without thinking, he lifted the small figure into his arms. The child was lighter than he expected, its body fragile and warm against the cold night. It clung to his armor, hiding its face against his chest. Marin stood, glancing around. The patrol route would not allow him to linger here long. If anyone found him with the child, there would be questions. Harsh ones. He thought of leaving it here, but the idea twisted his stomach. Alone in the ruins, the child would not last an hour. The Dran were searching, he was sure of it. But they had not reached here yet. With a deep breath, Marin made his choice. He turned back toward the outpost, holding the child close. Each step felt heavier, not because of the weight in his arms, but because of the secret he carried. His heart beat fast, louder than the crunch of his boots. The walk back seemed endless. Shadows stretched long, and every sound made him tense. Once he thought he heard a patrol nearby. and he pressed himself against a wall, covering the child with his cloak. The small figure trembled but made no sound. When the footsteps faded, Marin let out the breath he had been holding and moved on. At last, the outpost came into view, its dim lights glowing through the dark. Marin slipped through a side entrance, avoiding the main gates where the guards stood watch. He moved quickly down narrow halls until he reached his quarters, a small room with a bed, a desk, and little else. He closed the door behind him and lowered the child onto the bed. The child sat still, looking around with wide, curious eyes. Its skin shimmered faintly in the lamplight, colors shifting like waves. Marin knelt down in front of it, studying the small cuts and bruises along its arms. He found a rag and a flask of water, gently cleaning the wounds. The child flinched at first but did not pull away. When he was done, the child leaned back against the pillow, breathing slow and steady. Marin sat on the floor, his back against the wall. His rifle leaned in the corner, forgotten for the moment. In the quiet of the room, he thought of his sister again. She had been small, with bright eyes and a laugh that filled the house. She had been taken by the war, just as so many others had been. Looking at the child now, Marin felt the same protective pull he once felt for her. The night dragged on, but Marin did not sleep. He listened to the faint breathing from the bed, the soft rise and fall of the child's chest. Outside, the wind howled through the broken colony, carrying the echoes of a war that never seemed to end. Inside, for the first time in a long time, Marin felt something different. Not hatred, not anger, something gentler. And yet deep inside, he knew this choice would not remain hidden. Sooner or later, someone would discover what he had done. The Dran would not stop searching. His own commanders would not forgive. But as Marin watched the child rest, he told himself one thing. Whatever came, he would not regret it. For in that moment, beneath the broken truce and the endless war, he had done what felt right. He had saved a life. The morning came slowly, gray light slipping through cracks in the broken walls of the outpost. Marin had not slept at all. He sat by the bed where the alien child lay curled under a blanket, its chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The night had been quiet, but Marin's mind had not been. Every time he closed his eyes, he thought of patrols finding out. He thought of his commander's voice, sharp and cold, demanding answers. He thought of the punishment for hiding an enemy. Yet when he looked at the child, he felt the same steady pull inside him. The child opened its eyes at last. They were large and bright, glowing faintly in the dim light. For a long moment, the child simply stared at Marin as if trying to understand him. Marin raised his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. The child tilted its head, then reached out one small hand and touched his armor. "You are safe here," Marin said softly, though he knew the child did not understand human words. Still, his tone was gentle and his expression calm. The child relaxed, lowering its hand, and a faint sound escaped its lips. It was not a human word, but it was not angry either. Marin stood and began to prepare. He needed food and water for the child, but taking supplies without notice would raise questions. He decided to start small. From the outpost kitchen, he gathered a little bread and some dried fruit, enough for himself and a long patrol. He filled a flask with water, his hands steady though his heart raced. No one questioned him yet. Back in his quarters, he placed the food on the bed. The child sniffed at it, unsure at first, then carefully nibbled. Marin watched closely, trying not to smile. He had seen soldiers share meals in silence, but watching a Dran child eat human food felt like something different. Something fragile and strange. When the meal was done, the child curled back on the blanket, its small body warming the cold room. Marin sat at the desk and tried to think. How long could he keep this secret? Hours, maybe a day or two at most. The outpost was not large. Soldiers gossiped, and secrets never lasted long. Already he had noticed glances in the hall, men and women muttering about strange sounds at night. He told himself to be careful. That day, Marin went on his assigned patrol, leaving the child hidden in his quarters. Every step he took outside filled him with dread. What if someone opened his door while he was gone? What if the child cried out and drew attention? He forced himself to stay calm, scanning the ruins as he always did, though his thoughts were far away. It was during this patrol that he noticed something unusual. In the distance beyond the broken towers, faint trails of smoke rose into the sky. He crouched low, watching carefully. Dran scouts, perhaps. Or survivors. Either way, they were close. Too close. His chest tightened. Were they searching for the child? The thought would not leave him. When he returned to the outpost, he heard the whispers again. A pair of soldiers passed him in the hall, muttering about hearing voices near the quarters. Marin kept his face still, his stride steady, but inside his stomach turned. The child had made a sound, he was sure of it. He would have to be more careful. That evening, Marin sat with the child again. He studied its face in the lamplight, trying to understand. Its features were sharp but soft with youth. Its skin shimmered with strange patterns when it moved. He wondered about its parents, about whether they were alive and searching even now. He wondered what it meant that he had found the child here, alone under rubble. "You must be important," Marin murmured. The child tilted its head at his voice as if listening. The days stretched on and each one felt heavier. Marin continued to patrol, to eat with the others, to train as if nothing had changed. But at night he returned to his quarters and checked on the child, giving it food, water, and what comfort he could. Slowly the child began to trust him more. It no longer hid when he approached. Sometimes it even reached for him, small fingers curling around his hand. The first time it did, Marin froze. Then slowly he let the child hold his hand until sleep claimed it. Yet outside his quarters, tension was growing. Rumors spread of strange movement in the ruins. Scouts reported alien signals picked up on their sensors. The commander grew restless, warning that the Dran were near. Patrols doubled. Weapons were checked twice over. Every soldier felt the weight of waiting. Marin felt it too, but in a different way. If the Dran were near, they were likely searching for the child. He thought of returning it somehow, but how could he? The outpost was surrounded. Patrols ran every hour, and any soldier who caught him leaving with an alien child would not hesitate to raise an alarm. Still, keeping it here much longer was dangerous. Each day the risk grew greater. One night, as Marin lay on his bunk with the child asleep nearby, he heard a faint sound outside his door. His hand went to his rifle at once. The footsteps paused, then faded. He waited, breath caught in his throat until silence returned. His suspicion was clear. Someone had stopped outside, listening. The next morning, the commander addressed the soldiers. "The enemy is near," he said in a voice that carried through the cold hall.
"Scouts report Dran searching the ruins."
"They want something. We do not yet know what. Stay sharp." Marin stood among the others, his face calm, his body stiff. Inside, his thoughts swirled. The commander was right. The Dran were searching for something, searching for someone, searching for the child now asleep in his quarters. Later, while alone, Marin sat with his head in his hands. He thought of his options, but none seemed safe. If he confessed, the child would be taken, studied, maybe worse. If he kept hiding it, discovery was certain. If he tried to return it, he would risk his own life. And yet, each time he looked at the child, the choice became clear again. He could not abandon it. He remembered his sister's face, her smile, the way she had once clung to his arm when she was small. She had needed him then, and he had failed to protect her. He would not fail now. That evening, the child sat up on the bed, watching him closely. It reached out a hand and made a soft sound, almost like a question. Marin moved closer, lowering his rifle to the floor. He placed his hand gently over the child's. Its skin was warm, almost like human skin, but smoother, with a faint shimmer. For a moment, soldier and child simply looked at each other, a fragile bond forming in the silence. Outside, the winds carried the distant hum of engines. The Dran were drawing nearer. The whispers in the outpost grew louder. Marin knew time was running out. As he sat in the dim light, the child leaning against him, he made a promise to himself. Whatever came next, whatever danger approached, he would stand between it and the child. He had already chosen. The dangerous choice was made the moment he pulled the child from the rubble. There was no turning back now. The days that followed were heavy with tension. Every soldier in the outpost felt it. Patrols were doubled, the walls were reinforced, and the commander's voice grew sharper each morning as he reminded them to be ready. Something was moving out in the ruins. Something was coming closer. Marin knew what it was. The Dran were searching. They were not simply scouting or watching. They were hunting. And he knew who they were hunting for. Each time he saw the child asleep in his quarters, he felt the weight of it pressing against him. The child's presence was no longer a secret he could keep for long. Too many soldiers had grown suspicious. Too many strange sounds had been heard in the night. That morning, Marin went out with his patrol. The air was dry and cold, carrying the sharp scent of dust and smoke. The ruins stretched wide, empty streets broken by fallen towers and shattered walls. Marin moved in silence, his rifle ready, his eyes scanning every shadow. The others walked with him, though they spoke little. Even the newest soldiers could feel it. The air was too still, as if the ruins themselves were holding their breath. Halfway through the patrol, the silence was broken. A distant sound rolled through the streets, faint but steady. Engines. The soldiers froze, listening. The commander of the patrol raised a hand. "Positions," he whispered. They crouched low, rifles ready. Marin's heart pounded in his chest. From the far side of the ruins, figures began to move. At first, they were only shadows among broken walls, but soon their forms became clear, tall, armored, and alien. The Dran. Their armor gleamed faintly in the weak light, patterns running across it like flowing water. They moved with precision, scanning every corner, their weapons held at the ready. The patrol leader signaled for silence. The soldiers waited, breath caught in their throats as the Dran advanced. But then something strange happened. The Dran did not fire. They searched. Their eyes scanned the ground, their movements purposeful, as if looking for something hidden. Marin's chest tightened. They were searching for the child. He knew it with certainty. The patrol leader whispered into his comm, calling for reinforcements. Soon the outpost would be on full alert. The ruins would become a battlefield again. Marin kept his rifle steady, but his thoughts were elsewhere. If the Dran reached the outpost, if they pushed through the defenses, they would find the child. And if his own people discovered the child first, there would be no mercy. The Dran spread out, moving through the ruins. Their leader stepped forward, taller than the rest, with a long weapon strapped across her back. Her armor was marked with colors and patterns Marin had never seen before, symbols of rank and command. She turned her head, scanning the broken buildings, and for a moment Marin thought her gaze fell directly on him. He held his breath until she turned away. When the patrol returned to the outpost, the commander was already waiting. His expression was hard, his voice sharp. "The Dran are near," he said. "Too near. They are not attacking, but searching. We do not know what they seek, but we cannot allow them to reach it first. Be ready." The soldiers nodded, some with grim determination, others with fear. Marin stood among them, his face calm though his stomach twisted inside. He returned to his quarters as soon as he could. The child was waiting, sitting upright on the bed. Its eyes widened when it saw him, and it reached out a small hand. Marin knelt beside the bed, placing his hand over the child's. "They are close," he whispered, though he knew the child did not understand. "They are searching for you." The child made a soft sound, its eyes shining. Marin felt the weight of his choice pressing heavier than ever. He had saved the child, yes, but in doing so, he had placed himself between two armies. His own people would not forgive. The Dran might not either. That night, the outpost shook with the first attack. Sirens blared, lights flashed, and soldiers scrambled to their positions. The sky lit up with streaks of fire as weapons roared. The Dran had broken the truce. The war had returned. Marin rushed to the wall with the others, rifle in hand. The night sky was alive with flashes of light as ships fired from above. The ground shook with explosions. The Dran moved through the ruins, their armor glowing faintly in the chaos. Human soldiers fired from the walls, shouting orders and warnings. The air was filled with smoke and fire. In the middle of the battle, Marin's thoughts were torn. He fought as he had always fought, his rifle steady, his aim true. But in the back of his mind, he thought of the child alone in his quarters. If the Dran broke through, the child would be caught in the fire. If his own people searched the quarters during the chaos, the secret would be revealed. He could not let either happen. The battle raged through the night, neither side giving ground. At last, as dawn broke, the Dran pulled back, retreating into the ruins. The soldiers cheered, though their faces were weary and their numbers fewer. The commander called it a victory, but Marin knew better. The Dran had not been defeated. They had only withdrawn. They would return. After the battle, Marin hurried back to his quarters. He opened the door to find the child curled in the corner, trembling but unharmed. Relief washed over him. He knelt and gathered the child into his arms, holding it close. "You are safe," he murmured, though the words were more for himself than for the child. But his relief did not last long. A shadow fell across the doorway. Marin turned sharply, his hand going to his weapon, but stopped when he saw who it was. A Dran warrior stood there, tall and strong, her armor marked with symbols of command. Her weapon was ready, but her eyes were fixed not on Marin, but on the child in his arms. The child let out a soft sound, reaching toward her. The warrior removed her helmet, revealing a face sharp with strength but softened with emotion. Her eyes shone as she looked at the child. Then she spoke, her voice steady, carrying a weight of authority. The words were in the drawn language, but Maren understood their meaning by the way she spoke them. She was the child's mother. Maren's grip tightened on the child, though not in fear. The mother's eyes turned to him, filled with shock and confusion. Here in the middle of war, a human soldier stood holding her child. She raised her weapon slightly, then stopped. Her voice was sharp as she asked the question he had expected. Why? Maren swallowed hard, his voice low but steady. Because no child should suffer. The mother's eyes narrowed, studying him. Around them, the sound of battle still echoed in the distance, but in that small room, the world seemed to hold still. Human soldier and Dran commander stood facing each other, the child between them. Neither moved. Neither fired. The silence stretched long, broken only by the soft breathing of the child. The room felt impossibly small. Maren stood still, holding the alien child carefully in his arms. Across from him, the Dran commander, the child's mother, lowered her weapon but did not relax. Her eyes were sharp, studying him, trying to read every movement, every heartbeat. The soft hum of the outpost outside seemed distant, the chaos of battle forgotten for the moment. Maren's grip on the child was firm but gentle. He could feel the small body trembling slightly. The child looked between the two of them, its eyes large and unafraid, as if it sensed the tension but also the care surrounding it. Maren realized then that the child was not just innocent. It was the reason the fragile moment existed. The Dran commander stepped forward. She was taller than most humans, her frame strong and precise, but her voice carried calm authority. "You risked your life for this child," she said in measured tones. "Why?" Maren looked down at the child, then back at her. He could see the disbelief in her expression, the mixture of suspicion and awe. "Because no child should suffer for war," he said. His voice was steady, though his thoughts raced. He had trained for combat, for orders, for survival, but nothing had prepared him for this. "This child is innocent. I could not leave it to die." The commander's eyes softened slightly, but her posture remained rigid. "You are human," she said, her words heavy with meaning. "And yet you acted as if you are more than that." Maren did not reply immediately. He felt the weight of the statement. More than a soldier? Could he be more than that? He had fought for his people, obeyed orders, seen comrades fall, and now he had broken rules, defied orders, and yet he felt no regret. Only certainty that he had done right. The child stirred, leaning slightly against Maren's chest. Its tiny hand brushed against his armor, and Maren felt a warmth spread through him. He realized that the child had already begun to trust him. That trust, he knew, had changed everything. Outside the room, the sounds of battle had quieted. The Dran forces were still in the ruins, but they were not advancing. Human soldiers were tense, waiting for orders, unaware that a small moment of peace had formed in one of their quarters. Maren's heart pounded. Every second counted. Every movement was watched, though by whom he could not be sure. The commander moved closer, her eyes never leaving his. "You know this act will have consequences," she said. "Your people may see you as a traitor. My people may see you as a threat. Yet you still risked everything." Maren nodded slowly. "I do not regret it. The child's life matters more than orders or fear." The commander studied him, her expression unreadable. Then, after what seemed like a long silence, she spoke again. "I cannot take my child from you now," she said. "Not here, not yet. But you must understand, this is dangerous. For all of us," Maren swallowed, feeling the truth in her words. He had known the danger from the moment he lifted the child from the rubble. Now it was real. Not abstract, not imagined. The Dran commander had power, and she could take the child if she chose. And yet she did not. She had stepped back, trusting or perhaps testing him. "Then we need a plan," Maren said. "We cannot stay here. The outpost will not hold if the Dran return." The commander nodded, considering. "You are brave," she said. "Or foolish. Perhaps both. But bravery is not weakness, and foolishness can become wisdom if guided correctly. I will not harm you if you do not harm my child. You understand this?" Maren met her gaze. "I understand." For a moment they were two enemies in a room with one fragile life between them. The child, sensing the calm, reached up and touched the commander's hand. The commander's eyes softened. She knelt slightly, lowering her height to the child's level. "Are you hurt?" she asked in her language, her tone gentle. The child answered with a small sound, tilting its head. Maren watched silently. He realized that compassion, even between enemies, could bridge the unlikeliest of gaps. Here, in the middle of war, a fragile understanding was forming, and it was powerful. The commander finally stood, her gaze shifting from the child to Marin. "You will stay here," she said firmly. "I will return my forces to patrol outside, but I will not enter this room again until it is necessary. You must protect the child. I will watch from a distance, but you are responsible for its safety." Marin nodded. "I understand." She studied him for a long moment, then turned and left, her armor gleaming faintly in the dim light. The soft hum of her steps faded, leaving Marin and the child alone. Marin placed the child back on the bed, tucking the blanket around it gently. "You see?" he whispered. "Even enemies can understand when something is right." The child looked at him, blinking slowly, as if it understood. Marin smiled faintly. In that small gesture he felt hope. Perhaps this fragile understanding could be more than a moment. Perhaps it could be the start of something larger. The following days were tense but quiet. Marin continued his duties, moving among the soldiers, keeping watch and training. Yet every night he returned to the child, checking on it, feeding it, and talking softly in ways the child could not fully understand. The bond grew stronger with each passing day, small gestures building trust between human and Dran. Outside, the commander's forces patrolled the ruins, their movements careful, controlled. Marin noticed them from the walls, their patterns deliberate, avoiding the outpost but never straying far. It was a silent agreement, unspoken but understood. Each side recognized the other's presence, and yet neither interfered. One evening, a scout returned with news of human patrols encountering no resistance outside the immediate area. The commander had given instructions that no engagement was to occur near the outpost for now. Marin realized that the Dran were allowing him this space, perhaps testing whether a human could care for one of their own. Marin sat by the bed that night, the child asleep in his arms. He thought of what had happened, of the delicate balance they had created. He thought of the choices he had made and the danger that still waited outside the walls. The child's breathing was steady, its tiny chest rising and falling like waves in a calm sea. Marin felt a sense of purpose he had not felt in years. He was not just a soldier. He was a protector, a bridge between worlds. The night stretched on, filled with silence except for the soft hum of the outpost. Marin thought of the future. If he could survive this, if he could protect the child long enough, perhaps there was a chance for more than survival. Perhaps there was a chance for understanding, for peace. He held the child close and whispered, "We will make it, I promise." For the first time, Marin felt that hope was possible. The fragile understanding between him and the commander, between human and alien, was real. It had started in a small room, born from compassion and courage, but it had the power to grow. The next morning, he awoke to the child watching him, its eyes bright and alert. Marin smiled. Each day was another test, another challenge, but each day was also an opportunity. The child had changed everything. Marin had changed everything. Outside, the winds carried the faint sound of distant engines, but the immediate danger seemed paused. For now, the fragile understanding held. For now, human and Dran could coexist in this small room, bound by the simple choice of one soldier who had risked everything for life. Marin knew the world outside would not wait. The war would return. The danger would return. But he also knew that this moment, this fragile understanding, was worth fighting for. And he was ready to fight. Not with weapons alone, but with courage, patience, and a heart willing to act where others would not. The sun rose over the ruined colony world with a pale light, casting long shadows across broken buildings and burned-out streets. The battle from days before had left the outpost tense and quiet, but the threat had not vanished. Marin moved carefully through the halls, keeping watch for any signs of the Dran. Each patrol, each corner he turned, reminded him that danger was never far. Inside his quarters, the child slept quietly, curled under the blanket Marin had arranged with care. Marin knelt beside the bed, brushing a strand of shimmering hair from its face. The small alien had become more comfortable with him in the past days. Its eyes no longer held constant fear. It looked at him with curiosity, trust, and a quiet understanding. Marin had grown attached in ways he had not anticipated. The sound of the outpost's alarm suddenly shattered the silence. Marin's heart jumped and he grabbed his rifle, moving quickly toward the door. Outside, soldiers were rushing to their posts, shouting orders. The Dran were near again, closer than before. Marin's stomach tightened. He had prepared for this possibility, but preparation was not enough when the moment finally came. From the ruins, figures emerged. Not just scouts, but a full squad of Dran soldiers led by the commander herself. Her armor glimmered under the weak sunlight, her presence commanding and unwavering. She moved carefully, clearly assessing the situation, her eyes searching for the child. Marin adjusted his position, shielding the small figure in his quarters. "Stay calm," he whispered to the child. Its small hand reached for his, and he squeezed gently. He would not let it go, not now. The Dran commander stopped just outside the doorway, her eyes fixed on Marin, then on the child. "Give me my child," she said in a voice both strong and calm. "It is time to return." Marin stood tall, gripping his rifle but keeping it lowered. "I will not let anyone harm it," he said firmly. "Not now, not ever." The commander's gaze softened slightly, but her posture did not change. "I do not wish to harm you," she said. "You have shown courage. You have shown mercy, but this child is mine. You must understand." Marin nodded slowly. "I understand. But I am not giving up the child to danger. It is not a weapon, not a tool. It is a life." For a long moment, neither moved. Outside, the wind carried the distant hum of engines, a reminder of the armies waiting in the ruins. Marin could feel the tension pressing from every side. Human soldiers would not hesitate if they discovered the child. Dran soldiers would not hesitate if they thought Marin had harmed it. The room seemed impossibly small, holding the weight of two worlds and one fragile life. Then the commander made a decision. She lowered her weapon fully and stepped inside, her eyes never leaving Marin. "I will not fight you for this child," she said, "but you must promise to protect it, not for orders, but for its life. This is your choice. It may determine the future of our people." Marin swallowed, feeling the enormity of the moment. The child stirred in his arms, sensing the calm in the room. He looked at the commander and then at the child. His voice was steady, though his heart raced. "I promise," he said. The commander studied him, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded slowly, acknowledging the choice he had made. "Very well. I will trust you. But know this, the world outside will not wait. We will watch. We will judge. Your actions here are important, more than you realize." Marin felt a strange sense of relief, though he knew it was temporary. The war was not over, and danger still waited outside the walls. But in this small room, in this fragile moment, a bond had formed. Human and Dran could see beyond hatred and fear, and that bond would guide the next steps. Over the following days, negotiations began. Representatives from both sides arrived at the outpost, each wary, each watching the other. Marin acted as a bridge between the two peoples. He spoke of compassion, of understanding, of the simple truth that a child's life mattered more than war. His courage and mercy inspired others. Soldiers, both human and Dran, began to see that the cycle of violence could be broken if only for the chance to protect life. The child became a symbol of hope. Its presence reminded everyone that innocence existed even in a world scarred by conflict. Marin watched as humans and Dran worked side by side to reinforce the outpost, sharing information, sharing supplies. Old rivalries faded, replaced by cautious cooperation. The air that had once been thick with suspicion now carried the quiet hum of possibility. One evening, Marin and the commander stood together on the wall, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The child slept nearby, its small body tucked safely under blankets. Marin felt the weight of responsibility, but also the strength that came from doing what was right. "You have changed things," the commander said quietly. "Not with weapons, not with orders, but with your heart. Humans can be more than soldiers. You have shown it." Marin looked at her, a small smile forming. "Perhaps your people can be more than warriors too," he said. "We both have the chance to be better. For the child, for all of us." The commander nodded. "Yes, but the choice was yours. That matters most." As the weeks passed, the fragile peace began to grow stronger. Human and Dran patrols coordinated, keeping the ruins safe. Supplies were shared, repairs made, and trust slowly built. Marin continued to care for the child, teaching it simple things, protecting it from danger, and watching it learn. The bond between them grew, a quiet reminder that life was worth defending. Then came the day when the commander returned to the child's quarters, not with weapons or anger, but with quiet respect. She knelt and spoke softly in her language. The child responded with a sound that carried warmth and familiarity. Marin watched, understanding without translation that trust had formed between mother and child. The commander turned to Marin. "Your choice has created a future we could not have imagined. For this I am grateful. Your people may yet understand that compassion is strength." Marin nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He knew the battles would continue, that war was never truly over. But in this moment, a new possibility had emerged. Human courage, human empathy, had bridged a gap that seemed unbridgeable. The child's life had reminded them all that mercy and understanding could change everything. As the sun set, Marin stood by the wall, watching the world below. The ruins were no longer just reminders of war. They were spaces for rebuilding, for hope. He held the child close one last time before returning it to the commander, knowing that this act of protection had shifted the future. The commander placed the child gently on the ground, allowing it to stand on its own. The child looked at Marin, then at its mother, and ran into her arms. Marin felt a warmth in his chest, a quiet pride that went deeper than any victory on a battlefield. He had risked everything, and it had mattered. The commander turned to Marin once more. "The world may still test us," she said, "but your courage has made the first step. Remember this. Remember that one act of mercy can change the path of many." Marin nodded, knowing she spoke the truth. He had acted not as a soldier, but as a human being. That had been his greatest weapon. That had been his greatest victory. As night fell, the outpost glowed softly under the stars. Humans and Drown moved quietly through the streets, working together in a cautious peace. Marin walked through the halls one last time that evening, stopping to look at the child sleeping soundly with its mother nearby. The weight of the world felt lighter, for the first time in a long while. In that quiet moment, Marin understood the power of choice, the value of life, and the strength of compassion. One human, one choice had created a chance for peace. One soldier risking everything for an enemy child had reminded two worlds of what mattered most. The night stretched on, calm and filled with promise. Marin looked up at the stars, thinking of the battle still ahead, but also of the future they could shape. He had chosen well, and that choice would echo far beyond the ruined streets, far beyond the walls of the outpost into the hearts of those who still hoped for a better world.